Hello, good evening. My name is Ana Laura Monroy Salas, and today I want to talk with you about my project, Sunscreen for the Electromagnetic Spectrum. Let's start it. First, we got the objective. The intention of this investigation is to discover how tolerant we are to skin exposure of ultraviolet rays, and to prove which kind of sunscreen is the most appropriate for daily use in humans according to their properties. Today, it is common to find advertisements and scientific articles that prove that prolonged exposure of skin to the sun causes irreversible damage to health. Therefore, the use of sunscreens is recommended to avoid future risks. But while we are in the supermarket, do we really know which sunscreen is the best for us? Do we understand perfectly what we are exposing ourselves to? Well, the main physical event we're exposed to is the electromagnetic spectrum. Electromagnetic waves are the way energy is released throughout the universe. Depending on their frequency and their wavelength, we can classify the waves into different categories in the spectrum they form. The frequency we're worried about are the UV rays, since they are the most harmful that we receive from the atmosphere. They are divided into UVA, UVB, and UVC rays, being the UVA the less harmful ones, but at the same time the most abundant ones, with at least 95% of the total UV rays in the nature. Then we got the UVB, which is a medium level, and finally the UVC rays, which are the least abundant of all, being almost completely absorbed by the atmosphere, but at the same time being the most harmful one for our skin. But are we really conscious about the way our skin is made and the way it works? Well, as it is shown here, we've got the three main layers of the skin. The first one is the epidermis, the one that covers the surfaces and the cavities of the human body. It contains camucells, like melanocytes, which are cells that store melanin, and keratinocytes, cells that store keratin, which provide protection, color, and support to the skin. Next, we've got the dermis, formed mainly by fibroblasts, cells that form protein fibers, mainly from collagen and elastin, that provide elasticity and strength to the skin. Here, there are also capillaries, nerve endings, sweat glands, and sebaceous glands. And finally, we've got the hypodermis, the deepest layer of the skin. It serves to store energy through adipocytes and to give extra support to the skin with collagen fibers. We can also find blood vessels and arterioles that are responsible for supplying the blood to the dermis. And to protect our skin from radiation, the scientists recommend the use of a sunscreen. What most of us don't know is that there are two types of sunscreen in the market. The first one being the physical sunscreen. They contain zinc and titanium oxide, and these sunscreens absorb ultraviolet radiation and reflect it at visible light. The main defects they have is that their components cause dryness on the skin and leave a white trace of the components when drying. On the other hand, we've got the chemical sunscreens, which are newer. These are made with components of carbon, such as mexorel, and what they do is absorb ultraviolet radiation and convert it into infrared energy. They do not dry out the skin or leave a trace of the components, but once the radiation is absorbed, they cannot absorb more. It must be applied constantly, with a minimum wait of 30 minutes before exposure for the components to adhere to the skin. And now I must tell you that I didn't realize the experiment because it could be dangerous for someone who doesn't have the special equipment it is needed to test sunscreens without damaging myself. But I made extra research about it. Here we can find the main variables for this experiment in general. The first one being the time, which is a constant of 2 hours. Then the skin damage, which is the dependent variable or the result. Next, we got the sunscreen, which is independent according to which sunscreen will we choose in the future. And finally, the weather, which is a constant, I hope, using rainy days, for example. No, sunny days, I'm sorry. Now, I've got a video of a guy that did almost the exact same experiment I thought in the first place. And just let me show you a few fragments of the video when he did the experiment. Oh, Jesus.
It's 104 degrees and I'm about to sacrifice my body in the name of science. We're designing the experiment like a sun ray with a control circle in the middle where there will be no sunscreen at all.
Aw, so cute.
Each ray around the center will have one of our test sunscreens. Around the outer edge, we're using a very low 8 SPF. It's a throwback to 90s, Jake. Time to go tanning. We've been in the sun for a very, very, very long time. After 2 hours in direct sun in the Utah desert at 106 plus degrees, it's time to evaluate the results. We can see in the direct center the sun was definitely out. Right in the middle of my back, I have a nice solid burn that's painful to the touch and a bright red color. Around the center though, there is little difference between the brands or the SPFs. You can definitely see a difference though where the 8 SPF was. That's not quite the dramatic result that I was hoping for, but it is an interesting result. It's interesting to know that no matter what sunscreen you get, it seems to do a good job of protecting you. Always wear sunscreen. Doctors recommend at least an SPF 50.
Okay, that was it. Now, fuck. I'm so sorry. Okay, the experiment I am showing you right now is not the previous one, but the one carried out by the Organization of Consumers and Users of Spain. In this experiment, they tested broad coverage sunscreens of various sun protection factors. These turned out to be their best sunscreen. And if you don't know, the SPF or solar protection factor is a number we mainly see in sunscreens. It tells additional protection it gives us from the rays that are more harmful, in this case, the UVB ones. And now the analysis of results. The higher the SPF, the higher is the protection of the UVB rays. But that doesn't mean we are fully protected from the UVA rays. UVB rays cause a red pigmentation in the skin, just as shown as the previous video. But UVA rays are mainly responsible for the age of skin and the development of skin cancer in the future. This is because the UVB rays are more harmful at first sight, but they only reach the epidermis due to their higher frequency. On the other hand, UVA rays are less harmful in the instant, but they can reach the dermis, and taking account on their wavelength and the more we're exposed to them, they may be considered the silent killers of our skin. And now, the conclusions. The use of sunscreen is important nowadays. It lowers the possibility to develop a skin disease. There is much more variety of sunscreen than ever, and we don't even remember to apply it every time we leave our homes. There are many factors that go into buying a sunscreen, not only the protection, but also the quality, price, and type of skin on which it is recommended to apply it. There is literally a sunscreen for each person. Use sunscreen. It is better to prevent diseases if we take more care of our lifestyle. And finally, the bibliography and references for this project. Thank you so much.